Okay, so we are spiritual beings, which are really human beings. And by that, even though I, as usual, don't know what I'm talking about, it's just a way of distinguishing what we are, a human being, as opposed to something that is not human. And when you say a spiritual being, that is because you are a human being, a spiritual being. The spiritual element is what separates you from other species. But essentially, I would say that aside from that, because that doesn't really make any sense, really it is in the creation where you come from. That's probably the only difference, I would think now. And if you are a human being, whatever you think you came from, or how you evolved or devolved, as I've been saying for a long while, because, in my fantasy tale, the human being was already created, shall we say, with everything they needed. They didn't need to, develop into something better because they already were created with all. It's just that they lost that along the way. The process of coming to now, the end of the Matrix. But the Matrix is not real. The Matrix is not how our home or our habitat should be. It is contaminated. It's unnatural. And human beings are natural beings. That's another word that I like to use because it doesn't apply to the world around us anymore. And I don't know, when it did. I assume it once was. I personally assume that only because it doesn't make sense to me that you would have something natural in an artificial environment, just as you wouldn't normally have something, artificial in a natural environment. They're separate things. They're like two different, I can't use the word. I don't know what I'm talking about here. But either way, because I don't have the right words and I don't understand it enough. Also, there could be, as I've said before, there could be many ways of looking at those things. You could say, I suppose, everything started out perfect and natural and then became contaminated by an artificial force that infiltrated and took over and contaminated the region or the earth. I suppose I would have thought that, but also that depends on how far you want to take that degree. Now, when I first made my first video, I did not see this Earth matrix. I saw it as a matrix, but I didn't see it as a totally artificial matrix. I saw it as a natural realm invaded by artificial technology. All technology is artificial. It's not natural. That makes sense anyway. I don't suppose I'd get an argument there. Not unless I was talking to the humans that now make up most of the population, that being a psychopathic, narcissistic variety of human beings in varying degrees. Once you get past a tipping point in the psychopathy, I think that's the word, and it is psychopathy. It is psycho, yes, without being funny about it. It is psycho, and there's nothing funny about it. It's so destructive in the numbers that we have now that even if you had a natural Earth, it would still be destroyed just by human input. This should never happen, not to a large extent. Of course, we're all conditioned, I think that's the word, and we've been infiltrated by technology, by negative influence, by negative information, by just a whole negative or false concept of what we are, what our world is, what the history is, what even other human beings really are. And when I say other ones, I more or less mean the individuals that I've talked about before, the demigods. The demigods of the world are anyone or anything that is seen by the vast majority, anyone or anything that has any real influence, any real power in the matrix or on Earth, whatever you like. I say whatever you like, but, like I say, when I made my first video, I still knew the world was a matrix. I just thought it was a semi-natural matrix. But in that space of time, like 12 months or more, I now realise that it is not a natural world infiltrated by artificial technology. All technology is artificial. All technology is anti-life. All technology is anti-human. All technology is a negative frequency vibration for a human being. like, of course, you know, that, that frequency, which is largely the vibration of sound, in any artificial or technical form, it's a negative vibration. But of course, if it's in a very small amount or spaced out or not continuous and not particularly of the wrong frequency, shall we say, an aggressive, anti life kind of frequency. And I think most people would know what I mean by that. Like, you can listen to noise and you know when a noise is irritating, when it's annoying, when it's got an aggressive undertone. This, because we are in a frequency vibration world, even though it's artificial, and because humans are that also, they're affected by that. And if they weren't in an artificial technological world where there is so much technology, they wouldn't be affected negatively, and therefore their vibration would not be brought down to where we are rendered virtually insignificant in the matrix. We have little ability to influence the matrix, bring the matrix to a positive vibration. Because if you want to keep the Earth matrix livable for a human being, then it can't be it can't be out of balance. Because when it's out of balance, and I don't know what I'm talking about here, I'll say this, I really don't understand these things at any sort of scientific level at all. But, it's like the personalities that is the average person now, in Earth. They are out of balance. They're way over on the negative side. That is not, all their emotion, all their feeling that contributes with their thinking, which is also negative. All their feelings, all their emotion, all their thinking is negative. It is all anti-life. It is all anger. It is all aggressive. There's no productive element there because of the way that personality has gone so much into the negative. That's not how a human being is meant to be. They're meant to be totally in the positive. None of us are, of course. But if you're a little bit lucky, you won't be right in the red or in the negative to where you cannot create a positive reality. Your negative thinking, feelings and emotions and thinking and thoughts will bring your reality down. And the Earth as well, because it will be a domino effect, as they say, particularly if it starts at a center or source that is stronger, because real human beings are the only strong force in the matrix. They're not the largest numbers, but they're tiny numbers. And this is also because we're at the closing stages of this frequency battle. So, numbers would probably be lower now than ever, I would think. And that would be intentional because the Matrix will know all this, and the Matrix will, seek to have numbers in their favour in the closing stages. That would be good strategy for any sort of tug of war, any sort of game, any sort of competition, any sort of battle. And it is a battle. I don't like to use the word battle. I'm not keen on that sort of thing. But that is the stark reality. And I think that now it's even time for me to say that. I talk in concepts mainly. By that I mean I don't tend to get down to the details. I don't have enough knowledge that way, or enough information, or enough expertise, and I'm limited. I just fathom it out accordingly, according to my own experience and, the little bit of information that I receive or seek out, as best I can. But I'm not putting this well again. But I think that, like now, we can see that there is a situation, in the earth, and the situation, is now clear, or should be clear, even to those with cognitive dissonance. But, you've got psychopathic personality types with high cognitive dissonance operating in the Matrix now. They form the vast majority of human beings. The rest are of the Matrix. And those that are of the Matrix are those with the most power and influence, and so if you sort of can figure that out or think about it, because I'm probably not putting it very well, I've said these things a bit before, but you have to combine everything. You have to combine everything. You can't take notice of just one thing I say. It has to be the whole combination. And only then can you see the game and seeing the game doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to turn that game around into any sort of positive effect for a human being. This should have been the case, I think, and I am rather disappointed and even angry at myself and at my surroundings and at my own late awareness of how easy it is for the matrix to bring everything to a standstill or a close, or to a position where it has all areas covered. And it's not surprising in some ways that it should have all areas covered if you understand, the situation. You've got vast numbers that are working negatively for the matrix, for a negative low frequency matrix, with its aim of keeping that frequency low, with the aim of seducing human beings to keep playing. But the game now has took a turn for the worse, I would say, in the sense that in the past, yes, like in my previous video, which was probably a little incomprehensible because of my bad or not very clear way of putting the dancing with the devil kind of scenario. I said dancing, we're all dancing with the devil, dancing with the negative God entity, dancing with its minions, dancing with its seducers, dancing with its demigods, which seduce us mentally and sometimes physically even. Now, I'm losing my track here and I'm not particularly enjoying making the video. It's strange for me to realise at this point in time, and yes, I'm being overly dramatic, just like the Matrix demigods, which, I find almost offensive to myself even, but that's because this reality is so artificial in every way, so staged that you could be, human beings are lost in this maze of staged acting and staged scenarios and staged technology. The technology is not staged. The technology is right in my face. I'm looking at it now. It's everywhere. And I think it's normal. I think it's natural. It's not. It is, I can't say this clear enough because even I did not realise. It's not about even how advanced it is. And yet it is probably very, very, very advanced. Because, I see the technology as negative, even though I use it. I'm using it now. I had a comment on a few videos ago, would you like to be YouTube friends? That's what is not real. You can't be a friend to someone on YouTube. It's not meant to be like that. There's no vibration. There's no connection. There's no frequency. There's no input into the reality. It might be nice. It might make you feel, well, okay, so if it makes you feel a bit good, then maybe it does have some purpose. Okay, so I suppose so. But really, human beings are meant to really be in contact with one another in close vicinity, in physical proximity. Even the physical must not be underrated. In fact, it is under, when I say spiritual, it's almost like underrating the physical. The real human body, the natural human body, is spiritual. Only things that are artificial, only technology is not. Everything connected with a human being, even their body, is spiritual. Their natural body is special. And that is why we have two of everything. I'm not going to make any sense here because I will just be splashing it all together. So, it's all I can do. So there will be two of everything. But one, or maybe more than two. There could be many versions of the same thing, but there will only be one correct version. Just as there is only one human being. You can have imitations. Most of what we have in the Matrix is imitation. Only in the sense that because it's a collaborative effort, there's no one original, authentic human form of the demigods or of the Matrix. They don't operate that way, and the reason they appear to be so superior and so good is because they are a collaborative effort. They might present themselves singularly. They might present themselves singly. I'm not sure if I'm saying this right. They might present themselves as one, okay, as one, but they will never be one. Behind the curtain, there is always many contributing to the one. That is why the one looks so good, why the one appears to be multifaceted, multi-talented, knows so much, and it is given to them. Nothing is given to a human being in the Matrix. Human beings are deprived. They're kept in the dark, the opposite. I'm not sure if that made any sense. Oh. Yeah, but there's always more than one. Many ways of looking at things, many versions of everything. The Matrix always creates many versions. The versions are usually copied from an original because even the Matrix knows that the original is always the best. The Matrix has no problem utilising original things from other sources, just as the Matrix uses the human being. In some respects, the Matrix is lazy that way, even though most human beings would see themselves as lazy, because a bit like myself, you don't sometimes realise, because human beings take being human for granted, and because they think that they live in an earth where it is all human, and therefore human is common and so abundant that it is that it's I can't find the word, that it's oh dear. Well, if you have a real lot of everything and they all appear to be similar, it makes that thing seem insignificant and not important. And I know that there are some spiritual kind of beliefs down through the years, which even I've heard, where they emphasise that the individual is important, and that the Matrix hears and knows your every thought, and indeed it does. This God entity simulates, literally simulates, I'm using a fancy word here, simulates I've lost my train of thought here. Where was I? Oh dear. I need a good dong on the head to keep me on. The God entity and the Matrix simulates all that is original, simulates and has no problem utilising the smallest things from human beings, and then elaborates and makes them bigger, pieces them all together to where it makes sense and to where it is fascinating and interesting. Now, that isn't to say, there's, because there again, I can't get into the mind of a being, or even into the mind of the Matrix, because one, I am not a computer, and two, I don't have that understanding. I do try to figure it out, and that's based on what I see. That is based on what I think is the reality, that if you are a being that has full dominion over an earth, you are of a certain way of thinking, you want your world to be the way you think. So you look at the demigods and the followers and those that populate the earth, and then you have that representation on the earth, especially now that we're at the closing of everything. Because that means that being has had a lot of time to bring its fantasy of what it wants as the reality into being. Human beings have to be part of that because they are the source around which everything revolves. And that's how I slowly, reluctantly even, was forced into the conclusion, you could say, or the I can't find the words, I'm probably using the wrong words, forced to see, that the human being, or forced to see that although we live in an artificial, technological mind game and physically technical played reality. I didn't put that well. I had the words all muddled up. You'll have to do better than me. But if you can, but you probably know what I've been saying for a bit, and you know it anyway. What the reality is, like I say, these videos started out for a different audience, and now I don't have to really explain anything simply even. But I still try to keep it simple because I think that's just the type of things that I do. I can't do it. But either way, but like I say, either way, despite the reality that everything around a human being is technical and artificial, despite appearances even, and despite information, and despite the despite just despite looking, because everything does revolve around the human being, it is still at its heart, or at its essence, at its basis, controlled, and can only be what it is, or be even what the God entity wants it to be, through the spiritual human being, or through the idea of spirituality, or through, or how should I put that, or through the human choice, the human choosing to be on the technical side of the tug of war, or back to what it is meant to be and what it essentially is, and that is natural. I didn't put that very well. But nothing in the Matrix, I now think, can take place without the permission or the consent or the choice of a human being. The Matrix disciples, the Matrix demigods, the Matrix followers, the all that are of the artificial God entities matrix, anyone or anything, they cannot determine the way the matrix is, because the human being is the only one that can still have that choice, or that that vibration. I'm not putting this right. The vibration. Because they were originally. The centre of the earth, and the earth revolves around them. They create what is in the earth with their thinking, feeling, emotion, and vibration. The matrix demigods, or anyone who is anyone in the matrix, doesn't do that. They don't operate that way. They operate by seduction, by influence, by mind, influence, mind manipulation, if you want to use it that way. I mean, is it manipulation if you invite it in? Like if someone seduces you, should you, like you allow that seduction? Sure, it is very hard to resist for most of us. And also, if you think that's all there is, you see nothing wrong in it. As I didn't. You don't see it as a negative thing because you're like, well, we're all the same. And if one, I think I'll go off that anyway because I'm confusing myself and not making real sense. But it's a bit like, dare I say that, you talk about being seduced. Well, look, I think I've done videos before on this. Not very good ones, I admit. In fact, I wanted to do a really good video on, a fantasy video, really. But I think that, I take my fantasy serious. I don't need solid proof. You can't go back to the beginning of time. Even though in many ways, there is really, time is very much an illusion. Like what is, I'm here now making the video, but the matrix has already been decided. That's why I said it was chess game over, checkmate. But you see, it's also possible that I am here now. The game has already been played. It's checkmate. It's all over. But while there are still human beings in the matrix, even if there's only one left, like I say, even, it's not really like that last video in this, it like logically speaking, if you were looking at any game and you see that it's, you've got 5 minutes left and, it's, some sort of football match or something, and you've got 5 minutes left of the game and the score is overwhelmingly in favour of your opposition. Logically speaking, I was going to say theoretically speaking, but logically speaking almost, you would say, look, the game can't be changed. because even low vibration and frequency, I would think, can alter quickly. But it takes a big wave of that, a big swing, and that's not likely, you see. So it's like that. But also, the game's already been played. So that's like in the future. But I'm here in the present. Everything only the present controls things. The present can alter the past and the future. Maybe, I would think. So the game is never completely over. Until the last human, because even though we're not in our right domain, we're still more important than the Matrix, but the Matrix doesn't see it that way, and we have played into the Matrix hands, so therefore we don't see it that way either. And that's just how it is. I'm not putting this right at all. Not making sense here. The Matrix. It still has to be played right down to the is it to the wire? Is that the saying? Anyway, I was just going to say that in that beginning scenario, like, go back to the Garden of Eden. Everyone knows the Garden of Eden. Of course, we don't really know the Garden of Eden. We should know the Garden of Eden. We have long since lost sight of the Garden of Eden. I've never ever been in contact with the Garden of Eden. But I'm interested in it now, strangely enough. See, I personally take that as a fantasy. But in that fantasy, you have an Adam and an Eve, and then you have the seducer. I've talked the Matrix God entity. Matrix demigods. It's all the same thing, but that the demigods operate in our Matrix. But back then, we wouldn't have had the demigods. Well, we might have, I don't know. They would have been different. They would have been other people, other beings, whatever. I'm not making sense here, but you had this being is very powerful in seducing. This being doesn't play as much by, or doesn't win the tug of war as much by this being mainly operates by intellect, by seduction, by covert intellect seduction. Everything in the Matrix, this whole end scenario, and has always been, like, it's just that we're coming to a kind of finality, or to a head, if you like, because things have gone to the lowest frequency. And that's when, that's when the demigods play. That's when the Matrix really plays. It plays its last card, but it also plays and dances, because that's like victory. So then they celebrate, that's the word I'm looking for, and they celebrate. Now, this, if human beings were not in the dark, if they knew their abilities, and if they knew that they're playing the game for the Matrix by allowing themselves to enter into the negative thinking, by going against other human beings, by being seduced by the demigods, as opposed to admiring and looking up to real human beings, and even themselves, or at least not comparing to the contrived demigods that are seducers. So and this is why the Matrix always wins, is because of humans over time are losing sight of what they are, where they came from. And so now they see themselves, as they have then become, limited and not important in this reality. Whereas in reality, that has never changed, because it can't, because you're a human being, and you are always, until the last man standing. Is that the, oh, look, I don't even like saying these things. It sounds strange to me and sounds somehow wrong, but until the last, whatever the last, but I've lost track of it. The game is, this whole scenario is covert largely. So even if the limited human beings that are of a more positive vibe, shall we say, if they were aware, as some are now, not a lot, I don't think, but then again, there's not a lot anyway. If they were 100% aware of the situation, even aware of our suppressed, dominated, position in the Matrix, that we're just, that we make choices, but we're unaware we're making choices that have a vast effect. Because, if there was only one human being left in the Matrix, that human being would still have the same sway. In fact, I suppose theoretically, but I'm taking it to the extreme here, because this is not remotely how things are. But, because the human being is placed high, is placed high in the scheme of things. I don't know. I'm not putting this. I don't know how to put it. Even one human being still, it's only because of the covert nature of the matrix that the human being is not able to change the reality of the matrix to what would be a benefit to them. It's because of the of like I say, the ignorance of me being in a game where I don't know I'm in a game. I don't know the rules. I don't know how to play the game. I've never played it. I can't see most of what's going on. I don't know I'm in a tug of war because it's covert. That means you can't, you're not aware. How can you even play or even hope to get on top of a battle when you don't know you're in a battle? You can't see the way things are waged against you. You don't see that. You don't understand the matrix. You don't understand yourself. You see yourself as limited. So if you had any ability at all, you wouldn't be able to use it, and you don't. But that doesn't change the reality that because the human being is the original creation, they're still given preference in the matrix, the free choice. Even at limited level, they're still operating and have to be allowed that free choice. It's very hard, I'm not putting this very well, it's very hard to comprehend that because clearly I don't see myself as having any much free choice. You see yourself as cornered, completely trapped in a matrix that has, all on its side. So you really just see yourself as, yes, even when you realise that you have input into the matrix, because of the end scenario now, that we're at the end of this game, it is very hard to use, your thinking. You creating the reality with your thinking, your thoughts, and your emotion and feeling. But your emotions and feelings are all negative because the matrix has you surrounded with negativity, because it's got to that final stage of this reality game battle, you could say, or game, which is the competition, and that can only, but because it is largely covert, largely invisible, everything that is played against most human beings is invisible. And even those that see it, that is only because they are so trapped and so cornered that seeing it still leaves you fairly powerless to actually, to use your feelings and your emotions. In fact, your feelings and your emotions, which are the human being's basic kind of tool or force in the matrix, they will be used against a human being. They won't be taken from you. Nothing can be taken from you. But humans have the choice for a positive or a negative vibe. But because we're in a fantasy reality, and situations and scenarios are set up around a human being. Everything around me in my reality is an artificial, not naturally occurring situation. We see everything as kind of happening naturally, but it's all a game. It's all a battle all along, right to the last thing. So we don't kind of push up against it with all the knowledge and all the strength and force that we should, because we don't see that. And if you do see it now, you will be pretty much ridiculed if you kind of think that you can take this reality on knowing all this, because because if no one else knows it, then their reality is what they see. So you just look stupid, or or that you're out of touch with reality. So because our reality is presented a certain way, and what happens we believe is true. And most human beings don't see the reality that everything around them is not there for their benefit. At the present time, it's strange, in a way the reality is now being shoved in our face, that the reality is negative, that the physical reality is negative. It doesn't matter if something is... It doesn't really matter if something is physically real or not, because if you believe it's real, then your frequency and vibration and your thinking believes it to be real, so therefore you will create in this reality according to that. I don't know if I'm not putting this very well. But either way, we had Adam and Eve back in the fantasy Garden of Eden, and Eve had her own mate called Adam, and Adam was given to Eve, or really Eve, according to, I think, the original version of the fairy tale or the story, or for real if you want to take it that way, because I'm not here to tell people what to think, But it fits things. Even if it's totally false, I still think these things all fit our reality, and they fit this fantasy and this matrix kind of thing. To me, you have human beings, and you have your matrix God, and the demigods, and all this sort of stuff. So it all fits anyway. But either way, we had Adam, and we had Eve, and Eve had was given the perfect mate, and Adam was given the perfect mate. But I have to stress the Eve thing because in the original tale, if memory serves me correct, and it doesn't matter because I've never really read it, so I'm going to make it up. I'm going to elaborate, and if I get things wrong and it doesn't fit a certain storybook or a certain book, I'm not saying it does. I'm saying it fits the reality now. So, I'm just going to put my own little version on it, you know.